I'm Barbara Kelley, Executive Director of the Hearing Loss Association of America. Since 1979, HLAA has opened the world of communication to people with hearing loss through information, education, support, and advocacy. Over the past few months during the global pandemic, people with hearing loss have found that they need resources to navigate situations in new ways. We are technology users. Hearing aids, cochlear and bone-anchored implants, hearing assistive technology, and captioning. We have found that connections during this time are so important, and we've been able to keep these connections going through technology, like our virtual Walk for Hearing, our online webinars and virtual meetings, and like this, Experience HLAA. We have a convention every year for people with hearing loss, but this year we're not able to meet. So we are bringing to you during these 2 days some of the content from our conventions. But what is missing? You. You sharing your stories, meeting other people, learning about technology, going to workshops, having a lot of fun, and getting the peer-to-peer support in a place where it's okay not to hear well. And that's always been our approach. Give people reliable information, support, and then you can make your own choices about what you want to do to live well with hearing loss. So let's get started. Thanks to our presenting sponsor, CapTel. Here's Rob Engelke, President and Inventor of the CapTel Caption Telephone. Welcome, Rob.
Hello. On behalf of everyone at CapTel, welcome to Experience HLAA 2020. Since the earliest days of self-help for hard of hearing, Ultratech and now CapTel have proudly supported HLAA and its advocacy work on behalf of people with hearing loss. As we know, things look a little different this year. My hat's off to the creativity and dedication of the HLAA team who've worked so hard to make sure that you still have access to the latest research, industry trends, and new technologies that make the annual HLAA conference so important to all of us. Despite not being able to meet in person this year, and even with all the changes, one thing remains constant. From before the first days of HLAA to the early weeks of this pandemic, to this morning's program, everyone needs to have reliable communications to access the important people in their lives, to share their stories, to check in on one another, and to conduct our business, seek help in an emergency. CapTel is privileged to make those connections possible. Thank you, and enjoy Experience HLAA.
David Owen is a staff writer at the New York Magazine and the author of a new book called Volume Control, Hearing in a Deafening World. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Barbara. My book, Volume Control, began as a New Yorker assignment a few years ago, and the project grew and continued to grow as I realized that hearing as a subject is both endlessly fascinating and wildly underappreciated, at least by people who can hear well or think they can hear well. The book's subtitle is Hearing in a Deafening World, and that's the world that all of us, both the hearing and the hard of hearing, increasingly live in. I have some personal history with hearing issues. A century ago, my grandmother was taken duck hunting by a suitor in a boat on a lake near Austin, Texas, where she grew up. And he steadied his shotgun by resting the barrel on her shoulder. And when he fired, he not only missed the duck, but also deafened her on that side especially, but ruined her hearing for life. I myself have probably pretty typical hearing for somebody my age. I'm 65 years old. I don't hear as well as I used to before all the lawn mowing and rock concerts. But I don't have hearing aids yet. But I do have tinnitus, which I've had for 10 or a dozen years. Mine started in following a trip to China, and it's typically the case I did nothing about it other than vaguely worry about it for 6 months after I noticed that it was there. I kept thinking that maybe I would wake up and it would be gone, but that never happened. And finally, I went to see my doctor. Tinnitus is very often associated with hearing loss, and so he gave me a little hearing test. he struck a tuning fork on his desk and asked me to tell him when I could no longer hear it. He held it up and asked me to tell him when I couldn't hear it anymore. And after about a minute or two, he leaned forward because he could no longer hear it. He's about my age. It turns out that I have the ideal personality type for tinnitus as it's currently dealt with, because when my doctor told me that there was nothing to do about it, I thought, oh, good, I'll do nothing. The lack of a sure cure is in some ways a bummer, but in other ways it's a relief. If I could cure my tinnitus by, let's say, losing 30 pounds, I'd be angry at myself not only for having hurt my hearing, but also for not losing the weight. Nevertheless, we may be on the verge of major developments in treatments for tinnitus, as HLAA members are probably already aware, and I'll mention a little bit about that in a moment. If you begin to research hearing loss and hearing, you encounter a lot of big numbers, 37 million, 50 million, a billion, many others. Those numbers are so huge as to be virtually incomprehensible. But I'm now convinced that no matter how huge they seem, they are almost certainly too small. I've met so many people when I was working on the book and afterward who either described or demonstrated untreated hearing problems that I'm convinced that hearing problems and other sound-related health issues are far more prevalent than even those great big numbers suggest. As I was working on the book, I became much more aware not only of my own ears, but also people in my daily life whose standard initial answer to almost any question is, huh? Especially among my golf buddies, who are also mostly about my age. One of those golf buddies, a lawyer, has a history of making odd comments out of context. And my friends and I had always assumed that he was simply an oddball, a little bit spacey. But I'm now convinced that he behaves the way he does, not because he's from another planet, but because he can't hear very well. As is often the case, he himself has no idea. One day on a golf course in England a year ago, I asked him, David, have you ever had your hearing tested? And he was a little surprised, as surprised, in fact, as he would have been if I'd asked him if he'd ever traveled to the center of the earth. And it was a typical response. He made it clear to me that this was something he did not want to talk about. And so we haven't talked about it. There is still, remarkably in many ways, a stigma attached to hearing loss. People don't like to acknowledge that they have it. There was Charlie Rose, back when he was on television, had an hour-long program about hearing loss. And for the entire hour, there were people sitting around a table. They were talking about hearing loss, cochlear implants, hearing aids, modern technology. And in all that hour, Rose never mentioned that he himself was wearing bilateral hearing aids. And another one of the panel participants, who had won a Nobel Prize for physics, didn't mention that he was wearing hearing aids either. And his hearing aids you could see. In both cases, I assume they were ashamed to admit that they had this well-known sign of decrepitude, that they couldn't hear as well as they could when they were teenagers. And so they kept it to themselves, even though it was a perfect moment to bring it up. Another friend of mine, after reading my book, did make an appointment with an audiologist and was fitted for hearing aids for the first time in his life. And they made a huge difference to him. He apologized to the audiologist for having waited so long to deal with a problem that he had first become aware of 6 years before. But the audiologist said, oh no, you're actually early. You know, most people wait 10 years. So you're 4 years ahead of schedule. The protective measures that we've all been taking during the pandemic have had some interesting hearing-related consequences, both for people who can hear well and for people who can't. A woman I know is a member of a book group whose members are all have significant hearing losses. They used to meet in one another's houses, and they would aim their Roger pens at each other and try to keep up with what was being said. But they've been forced by the pandemic to meet online instead, and what the woman has discovered, to her surprise, is that their online meetings are more pleasant than their live meetings were, because the conferencing application they use has a captioning feature that makes it easy to follow the discussion. So much so that she's not necessarily looking forward to going back to meeting in person. Paradoxically, people whose hearing is intact have often had a different experience with online conferencing. Hearing people seldom realize how much of their comprehension depends on non-auditory inputs, inputs that people with hearing problems depend on consciously. But even people who hear quite well get much of their comprehension from, or a significant part of their comprehension from unconscious lip reading, from cues from facial expressions, and from clues from context. Those inputs can be harder for a hearing person to pick up on Zoom because of the frequent lag between what's said, what's seen, and what's heard, and because reading nonverbal cues is more difficult when you're looking at a screen, and also because when we sit in front of a screen, we tend to be less animated than we are in person. There's fewer clues coming from the way people behave when they're talking into a camera, as I am now. Interestingly, captioning programs depend for their accuracy on some of the same kinds of cues that hearing humans do for comprehension. I have a friend who works in voice recognition at IBM. He helped to create the voice of Watson, the Jeopardy playing computer. And he said that machines, like humans, have to rely on context for comprehension, and that they're much better at accurately transcribing conversations than they are at identifying random words. The reason is that the machines, like humans, are constantly drawing information from what's said. They're essentially eliminating possibilities for what the next word might be based on what they just heard. And this is true with humans too. It's why hearing tests by audiologists are given single words, random words, rather than sentences, because when you hear a whole sentence of information from the other words to figure out what's entirely being said, even if you pick up very little at all. There's another reason that captioning and simultaneous transcription are useful to the hard of hearing, because even when the programs aren't completely accurate, they do what I just mentioned. They often provide enough contextual clues to enable a listener's brain to fill in the unheard, and that's a good thing. It's a reason that sometimes when someone has a hearing difficulty, a captioning program that simply makes it clear what the general topic is can be enough to give their ears a boost and enable them to hear what people are saying. It's likely that people who are hard of hearing and have therefore had to learn to extract information in that way from partial inputs are better than hearing people at deducing meaning from context. At any rate, the vastly increased use of conferencing software over the past couple of months has accelerated the introduction of captioning features and captioning applications. This has benefits for the deaf, but also for the hearing. My daughter was once watching a Swedish television mystery. It was in Swedish with English subtitles. And she turned her back to the TV to do something at the stove, and suddenly she had no idea what was going on in this program that she had been following easily before. And she thought, I guess my Swedish isn't as good as I thought it was. But the truth is that our visual and auditory systems work closely together, even when we're not reading words. And conferencing utilities are a useful reminder of the power of that combination. Last month, I gave my publisher some revisions for the paperback edition of my book, which will come out this coming October. I was glad to have that chance because there have been some interesting changes in development since the hardcover came out, even though it was less than a year ago. And I know that more changes will take place between now and the fall and will continue to take place. This entire field is evolving so rapidly that it's impossible to keep pace with it. Two encounters I've had recently made me especially hopeful about the future. A college classmate of mine is a major investor in a company that believes that it has found a clinical cure for some of the most common forms of tinnitus. My classmate is also a participant in one of that company's trials. He told me that he has a nasal spray that he uses 5 times a day and that his tinnitus is entirely gone, completely gone. And because his tinnitus personality is exactly the opposite of mine, he is not the kind of person who takes no for an answer. He didn't go quietly into tinnitus. I believe him because he's done nothing but complain about it since he began to suffer from it. A few months ago, I visited the headquarters of a startup in Massachusetts, which is also in human trials, of a drug that it believes can restore hearing by inducing cochlear support cells to produce new, properly functioning hair cells. I was told at the time of my visit that early trials had shown hearing improvement in a significant number of test subjects, human test subjects. That trial was not designed to measure a possible effect on tinnitus, but some participants whose hearing improved reported that their tinnitus had also lessened and that the buzzing in their heads was quieter than it had been. There's also, the company believes, a chance that the drug that they've been using can be effective possibly against other illnesses as well. There are, furthermore, big changes underway in hearing improvement technology. There are improvements in classical hearing aids. There are improvements in PSAPs, the personal sound amplification products. There are improvements in cochlear implants. And there are potentially dramatic changes in the way that all such devices are dispensed and priced. In short, there are many reasons to be hopeful, not least of them the continued vitality of this very important organization. And thank you very much.
With 48 million people in the United States with hearing loss is a primary health issue. Working with our partners in industry is so important. We all want the same thing, for people to take steps to address their hearing loss. Here's Brandon Sawalich, Chair of the Board of Directors of the Hearing Industries Association, to share his perspective. Welcome, Brandon.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Brandon Sawalich. I'm Chairman of the Hearing Industries Association and President of Starkey. For over 55 years, the Hearing Industries Association has been focused on better hearing. Now, in 2020, we have 17 members from around the world focusing on technology and the patients and what we can do to deliver better hearing. Our vision at HIA is quite simple: improving the hearing healthcare of Americans through medical device innovation. We believe this is done through technology in bringing new innovation and new ways over the coming decade to help you get connected with your family, your community, and connecting people with people. Better hearing is personal. And HIA and the members of HIA understand the technology that we need to be bringing to you, and will continue to work hard to make sure that you are connected to each other, to your community, and to your family. We focused over the last year on our awareness campaign of Hear Well and Stay Vital to bring awareness on hearing tests, hearing loss, hearing solutions, and really educate people on what it means to have a hearing loss, what you can do about a hearing loss, and the technology that you can bring to your family member or yourself to help you hear better. Because not only do you hear better, you live better. You hear well, you stay vital. And where's the future going? The future is going in a lot of different directions for innovation in hearing healthcare, but also in hearing technology. People think of hearing aids, cochlear implants, other type of FM devices of maybe 20 years ago. Now, I'm a critic where I read a magazine or read an article and see pictures in the media and really understanding and educating the media and society on what today's technology can do, what today's technology looks like. It's no longer something of the 1980s or the 1990s. Hearing innovation is an everyday product, but it goes just beyond what it looks like. It's what's going on to bring a better surrounding sound to you. So if we look at the future of where we're working and looking towards, members of the Hearing Industry Association continues to advance technology through innovation, through ideas, but we have to bring those ideas to life and to product. If we look ahead over the next 5 years, where hearing innovation is going, number one, it starts with sound quality. People want to hear better in noise. People want to hear the sounds of who they're talking to and understand, know their surroundings. We also are looking at connectivity. Not only are we trying to connect people with people through better hearing, through better communication and listening, but we also do that through the devices as our cell phone or TVs or laptops. We also continue to look at advancements in battery life and what the power sources can be for the future of hearing technology, including, of course, rechargeables just like your telephones. We focus on features and design that continue to help you in your daily life, that might make your day just a little bit easier. Yes, you want to hear better, but there might be health features too. Think of it in the future as your hearing aid being able to take your temperature, your blood pressure, other types of health features that could help you and communicate to your loved ones on what your health status may be. We also continue advancement in personal FM systems, loop systems, and other features that go with hearing devices for an ultimate hearing solution for you. So we do all of this with the patient in mind, because we understand that hearing is personal. We understand that every ear is different, just like a fingerprint. Everyone hears differently. A hearing device fits, and the comfort of that device is different in everybody's ear. There's no one size that fits all. So of all the 17 members and companies that are associated with the Hearing Industries Association, we continue to look to the future and understand what we need to do to deliver to you. Because we have one thing in mind, you. It's not about what we think, it's we're listening to you on what your needs are now and next. We want to connect people with people. We want to connect people with their communities. We want to connect people back to their families. We want to connect people back to their societies and life. Because better hearing is personal. And it's very important now more than ever for us to have communications, discussions, and listen to one another and build those relationships. So on behalf of HIA, I appreciate the partnership and the opportunity to close out this afternoon's session and give you a little glimpse of who HIA is and that we are here for you, and know that we continue the advancement based on your needs. So I encourage all of you to join the rest of the Experience HLAA and Research Symposium and have a great conference. Thank you for being here, and thank you for caring.
If you like what you saw today, stick with us. Go to experiencehlaa.org and tell your friends about it, and look at the schedule over the next few days. There are plenty of good interactive sessions, along with some information about HLAA programs and words from our sponsors. On behalf of the HLA National Office staff in the Washington, D.C. area, and our board of directors, and our HLAA chapters all across the country, sit back and relax, and let's experience HLAA together.